Our guy, Tampa Bay Trey. I'm so happy that he's never changed the Twitter handle. The one and only Trevor Sikkema of Pro Football Focus. You remember him back in his days here in Tampa with Pewter Report. I love the orange, bro. I love the orange. Look at this guy. He knows the deal.
Had to represent for the show. Coming on with you, Jay. Always good to be with you, my friend. Appreciate you having me.
Yeah, you're the best, man. Let's start right with it. I mean, Daniel Jones, like on the streets, it's so crazy. Like, we knew he came out with that weird video message yesterday. It was like, in essence, a goodbye. They go to Tommy Cutlets instead of Drew Lock. They know with that injury settlement, we've seen this before with Russell Wilson and with Derek Carr, just kind of the next chapter. But Danny Dimes released. I mean, what do you make of that whole situation?
I didn't think they were going to release him because unless there's some cap manipulation that I don't know about, which there always seems to be, I'll say that, they got a $20 million dead cap hit now with releasing him. So it's sort of a lot of money to be taking all at once. Although if they're releasing him and it's to their books this year, obviously they're going to be bad anyways. So maybe it doesn't really matter too much. And if the money doesn't go over to next year, then I guess it's not that big of a deal. But kind of shocked, obviously. You mentioned the injury settlement sort of goes into it because if he gets injured, then all of his money next year is fully guaranteed. And that would have been way worse than the dead cap that he would have had with just releasing him. It is strange, though. I mean, like, the guy's your starting quarterback one week and then he's released from the team the next. Like, it's just, it does not really happen like that very often. I know some people were freaking out about him, taking scout team safety reps. That normally happens when you're QB3. You just don't have enough players in practice. And so somebody's got to fill in somewhere. You don't really take any sort of contact when you're a scout team safety. So
Baker was doing that in Carolina. Wasn't he doing that stuff in Carolina too?
Who was doing that in Carolina?
Baker. I think Baker was doing that in Carolina.
Yeah. And there have been like plenty of other quarterbacks in the past who have had to do that. And again, like it's not, I think people have been like, oh, they're moving him to safety. Okay. They're not moving him to safety. It's just kind of like what you have to do. But it does present some interesting opportunities because I think some team, they're not going to pick him up off waivers because then you'd have to take on his contract. So they're going to let him go off of waivers and then he's going to be sort of free to sign wherever he wants. And I mean, if you wanted to start it right away, Dallas would be objectively hilarious because they still have to play the Giants this season. So, having Daniel Jones be the best starting quarterback on your team and then playing against the Giants, I mean, that if Jerry Jones wants to sell tickets and wants to, be the talk of the town still, that would happen. He's probably QB1 with the Raiders if the Raiders wanted to sign him. Then you get into some other sort of interesting elements like does Sean Payton sign him with the Broncos to sort of like be the Taysom Hill guy, right? Like he had when he was in New Orleans, and Daniel Jones isn't as athletic as Taysom Hill, but some sort of package play stuff like that, where he's mainly a wildcat quarterback, but he's also a little bit of a threat to pass. We're seeing that with Justin Fields right now with how the Steelers are using him. So a couple of different avenues, but those are a couple of the teams that kind of come to my mind when I think of where we could see Daniel Jones next.
Yeah, it's kind of funny. We watched that last night in that game with the Browns and the Steelers, right? You saw they even put Dorian Thompson-Robinson in there like, oh, let's get DTR some snaps too in the snow. So you're seeing more of these teams. Remember years ago, it was like, I don't want to use two quarterbacks. What is it going to mean for the psyche of my starter? And now teams are like, yeah, just throw, Taysom Hill or throw any of these other running quarterbacks in there. How great was that game last night? I mean, that's football. Give me the snow. Give me Jameis. Like people are like, oh, he's going to throw a pick. I don't care. That's part of the allure of Jameis Winston. You don't know what the hell is going on. And then he's making snow angels and throwing snowballs at Richard Sherman and Ryan Fitzpatrick. And I mean, that was Jameis in a nutshell last night, wasn't it?
It was a camaraderie game, honestly. Like anybody who's ever played sports before knows that, like, even if it was at a middle school or high school level, right? I played like intramurals in college, but even like going to college, like if you played intramurals in college, if you played outdoor sports in any way, shape, or form, whenever the weather plays a factor, like whether it's really windy, maybe it's rainy. Obviously, if you played sports in Florida, which I did growing up, I mean, like anytime that it's rain, anytime that you're playing through the rain, obviously if you're up north, anytime you're playing through the snow or anything, if there's weather involved, you just have this like focus and like feeling about like wanting to play your best. And you watch the first half of that football game last night kind of sucked. I mean, it was boring. It was just like a really boring football game. And then the second half, when it just started pouring snow, blizzard out there, you could tell. every run that was more than like 3 or 4 yards, whole team's getting hyped. The offensive line's pumped, the running backs pumped, the sidelines are pumped. You know, a couple of those Jameis passes to Jerry Jeudy, they were like 6-yard passes, but Jeudy gets up and he's absolutely pumped, and the whole rest of the sideline's going nuts, and it's like a 6-yard pass. And so, you know, I know a lot of people say like, oh, that's real football weather. Honestly, that's just like sports.
Yeah.
If you play in any weather position where it's different than just sunny, you're just like, it's such a like you and your teammates, you band together, you get closer, you hype each other up, and you're just like, yeah, we're going to win this game where the elements are against us, if you will. So that was what made the second half of last night so much fun, is because I've been there before. I've never played in the snow, but I can remember many times growing up just south of Tampa, playing through the rain, playing soccer or football in the rain or whatever it is. And you have this feeling that you want to play your best against the elements. And I think we saw that last night.
Yeah, and it brings you back to being a kid, like you said. That's what these guys, you're playing a kid's game, the game you grew up playing and you love so much. And I'm glad you brought up the Jerry Jeudy, because these out passes that just like they took forever throughout the air, and it was like a 6-yard gain, and Judy's getting up freaking out. Like, I loved it. That was football at its best. We're hoping for football at its best coming up on Sunday for the Giants. For the Bucs against the Giants. Some injuries. It looks like Mike Evans is going to come back. Somehow Tristan Wirfs looks like he could possibly play. Zion McCollum returned to practice today. We know what their record is, Trev, and we also know what the schedule is looking like going forward. What's your whole thought process on the Buccaneers, on what they can do down the stretch to try to make a run at this thing and make the postseason?
Obviously, the first one's getting healthy, which, you know, it seems like it's a good indication that a lot of these guys are either going to play this week or at least are very close. You know, if a couple of these players, like if Zion McCollum still can't play, if Tristan Wirfs still can't play, well, you got hope for next week's game, and you feel a lot better about them coming back pretty quickly. I sure hope Mike's not coming back, you know, before he needs to, just because obviously they need him out there. There's no doubt about it. But hamstring injuries are tricky, man, especially ones that look as bad and as damaging as the one that he suffered, what was it, 3-4 weeks ago now. So I get it, like a month's a long time. You know, you definitely heal the hamstring, and he's going through everything that he needs to do to make sure he's good to go. But those are tricky injuries. You know, the high ankle sprains, the hamstrings, like those are the things that can linger and really limit you. So what you don't want to do is, just because you really need them, throw I'll say less than 70%, because a lot of times when these athletes get close to 70, 80%, they're going to play. So you don't want to throw out a less than 70% Mike Evans and just say, okay, well, just the fact that 13's out there is all we really care about. And you're going to basically play with a less than 70% Evans throughout the rest of this regular season. You need him to be able to get better. This needs to be the correct timeline here, but obviously it's going to be an important part of this game plan. I also think that it's time for Bucky Irving to truly be the RB1 on this team. Now, it's nothing against Rachaad White. I think that he needs to have a role within this game plan, and it can even be sort of like a duo rushing attack. But in my opinion, more of the carries needs to go to Bucky Irving, and more of the receptions I feel like needs to go to Rachaad White. And so balance is not always 50-50. I think a lot of people sort of struggle to grasp that. Like when coaches talk about balance, and when you talk about the balance of, you know, utilizing certain players for the other, balance doesn't mean that it's 50-50. That's not really what it means. It means you're doing what you need to do to put your players in the right position to complement one each other, whatever that ratio is. And to me, that ratio is giving Bucky Irving the ball a little bit more and letting him cook, because he's having a fantastic season as a rookie for them. So to me, I think those are the things you look out for. But then, you know, that's only on the offensive side of the ball. The defensive side of the ball has been a disappointment since week 5, Thursday Night Football against the Atlanta Falcons, right, where Kirk Cousins throws for over 500 yards. And really since then, it feels as though the defense hasn't been terrible the whole time, but there have been too many blunders. It's been too low, below expectations of what you think a Todd Bowles group would be. So with them getting a lot more healthy as of late, it's time for that defense to step back up like they were through the first 4 weeks of the season.
Yeah, I'm with you. It's kind of weird about the running backs. It's kind of flipped, right? You wish that Rachaad was kind of the rookie, because he could be the third down back, because he's probably better at pass pro and he's better at catching the ball out of the backfield. Let Bucky run the first 2 downs, but it's kind of backwards because Rachaad was the incumbent. So it's their strengths don't really match up with their roles, and you try to like get guys out there in situations where they can perform their best at the team, and that's a lot to ask for a guy like Liam Cohen in his first year. What do you make of the job of Todd Bowles? Because I've had this conversation with a bunch of people. I mean, you're looking at multiple division crowns, but there's still like that segment of this fan base, Trevor, where they're just something bad happens, get rid of Todd Bowles. Like he hasn't really ingratiated himself to enough of the fan base to where you go on a losing streak and they think that he doesn't survive these conversations. It's weird. I think he'll survive the season regardless of how it ends, even if it's bad. But just what do you make of Todd Bowles? Because obviously we take this tenure into account as well as his time with the Jets.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of things that sort of go into play here. One, I don't think they're going to fire him during the season. So anybody's like, oh, if the Bucs have another bad defensive performance, and people go like, oh, you got to fire Bowles like tomorrow, it's just not going to happen. That's not really their style. That's not really how they go through things. So he is going to, like you said, get the rest of this season. And look, I don't think that Bowles is the worst head coach in the National Football League. I don't. But, I tweeted this. I can't remember if it was 3 to 4 weeks ago. I can't remember even exactly which game it was. But, sort of looking at the trends of Bowles and, whether it's the timeout managements or certain play calls or when to go for it and things like that, a head coach needs to be progressive in this regard. And it feels as though Bowles just doesn't think about a lot of that stuff. He's very old school in his approach. A lot of defensive coaches are. And to me, the Bucs sort of start behind the 8 ball before any game begins because of how Todd Bowles approaches timeout and clock management and going forward on certain downs and distances and even like certain play calls and things like that. Obviously, I think that it's been a lot better over the last year because I think that Liam Cohen's doing a nice job as offensive coordinator. But to me, that's what you really want out of a head coach. Again, I don't think that he's the worst head coach in the NFL, but I do think that we're seeing a lot of mounting evidence that he's not exactly progressive in where the game is going and how to give your team those little edges here and there. So that's what you're really looking for as a head coach, because as the game is evolving, like you don't want to get too cute with things. I understand that. That's all very true, but you also still have to be pretty open-minded to, again, where that game is going. And, who were they playing the other day? Or who were they playing that one week where it was raining a lot and they didn't end up going for 2?
Oh, yeah, against Kansas City at the end of the fourth quarter.
And the reason why they don't go for 2 is because he's like, well, the ball was wet. Come on, man. Like, it's like
you just drove all the way down the field.
And if you don't want to go for 2, it's got to be a better reason than that. Right, it can't just be like, oh, we don't want to listen to analytics. Analytics can't understand that the ball was wet. No. 1, it can. 2, like the explanations. Like you said, you just went down the field. You just drove the ball down the field and you scored. What do you mean the ball was wet? The ball was wet for them too.
Right.
You'd rather have a situation where instead of one play to win the game, you want to give the ball back to Patrick Mahomes and then put your fate in a coin flip of the ref. I'd rather go score 1 point, especially because you just score. Anyways, so like those are the things that get me fired up about sort of how he approaches the game, where it's like, man, that thought process is something that's hard to accept every single week. He's not the worst coach in the world. He's not running a train wreck of an organization. He's not. I think he's a good defensive mind, but as a head coach, I think he's behind the 8 ball when it comes to a lot of those kinds of decisions.
Yeah, I'm with you, man. And it's hard because he's a guy that's so loved and respected around the league, right? So it's like his shop is always pretty much in good shape. Like at times he has great defensive performances. Look at the records of the Lions and the Eagles this year. They haven't lost to too many teams, but they both lost to the Buccaneers this year. Nobody was saying get rid of Todd Bowles after those weekends, right? Everybody was saying, wow, look at the job he did against Jalen Hurts. Look at the job he did against Jared Goff. I want to ask you about the Falcons, Trev. I was not buying the hype defensively going into the season. Offensively, they got a slew of weapons. I knew Kirk Cousins was coming off the injury. He's more of a regular season guy than a postseason guy, but they have 10 sacks in 11 games. Matthew Judon has been a non-factor. Justin Simmons and Jesse Bates, I thought it was 2 guys that play well off the ball. I didn't know how well that was going to vibe. And then they just get smoked. It's one thing to not be able to put up points against Denver, but you gave up 38 points to the Denver Broncos. What do you make of the Falcons, and how do you think that they're going to fare down the stretch? Because it's a 2-horse race in the NFC South.
Yeah, the defense it's hard to see the defense really playing that much better. Like the cavalry is not coming, right? The trade deadline is over. You made your move for Matthew Judon really at the early parts of the season. And so that was your move along the defensive line. You drafted Michael Penix and you knew what that meant at number 8 overall. Now, like if the debate was between Michael Penix or Dallas Turner, the edge rusher, I'll be honest, like I'll be fair to them. Dallas Turner is probably not like totally changing this defense either. Maybe Jared Verse would have because of how well he's playing for the Los Angeles Rams. But if the debate was truly between Michael Penix Jr. or Dallas Turner, people could sit here and say like, whoa, well, they should have drafted a pass rusher at number 8. If it would have been Turner, I don't know how different it is this year.
Right.
Long term, it could be better, sure, but I don't really know how much different it is this year for them. It's basically the Achilles heel of this team. And if the Falcons end up winning the NFC South, I can't see them going beyond wild card weekend. I just think team. I really do. Maybe with them hosting a game, since they'll be winning a division, they could win one, but especially if they get to the next round, it's just not a lot of there's just a team that you can't have a lot of faith in my opinion, because of exactly what you said, that defense side of the football. It's too much of a liability for them.
Trev, before I let you go, I got to ask you this. I know everybody talks football with you, but I know you're a big Lightning fan. Seeing Steven Stamkos return to Amalie Arena, brother, in the building, it was super emotional. I got a chance to talk to him, and he was just like kind of looking around. But you being a big Lightning fan being a big Stammer fan, to be able to see him come back, I mean, that had to be cool to watch even from afar.
That was really cool. Obviously, Julien Brisebois, the general manager, he's trying to do what's best for the team. And very clearly, they sort of had a long-term plan that they were sticking with. And Steven Stamkos wasn't really into those plans. And this is the decisions that general managers make. It's hard when it's a hometown hero, right? Yeah. It's hard when somebody who you thought was going to go wire to wire in a potentially Hall of Fame career at the beginning of it, you thought that it had that sort of potential, and to see it, one more contract, and he'll never have to wear a jersey that's not a Tampa Bay Lightning jersey. It's a really cool story. It doesn't get to happen a lot in sports, and you're lucky when it does, right? I mean, Derek Brooks is the guy that I think of where it's just like, man, wire to wire. It's just a Tampa Bay Buccaneer, Hall of Famer through and through. Ronde Barber, obviously, the same way as well. And there are some Tampa sports legends that has been the case. And we thought that we were going to have another one with Steven Stamkos. And it was really cool. I think everything that the Tampa Bay Lightning did to kind of welcome him back. And obviously the tribute video was awesome and everything. But it's tough to see him playing for another team. There's no doubt about it. But it was really cool, the reception that he had. And what just happened recently? Wasn't it Vasi? Did Vasi get his 300th win? Is that what it was?
300th win for Vasi, yep.
And Steven Stamkos was like a part of the video tribute. They got him to be a part of the video tribute. And so it sucks, man. When we say that sports are a business, a lot of things go into it. And this is the really unfortunate part of that, because I think Steven really wanted to be back in Tampa Bay. But the fact of the matter is that he's setting himself and his family and his kids and his grandkids and everything up really well by signing another extremely lucrative contract with the Nashville Predators. So if it was all equal, I think he would have been back in Tampa Bay, but unfortunately that's just not how sports work. So at least it's cool to see him still involved with things and obviously being part of player tribute videos and all that good stuff. No one can ever take away from us the goal that he scored in the Stanley Cup playoffs, coming back and everything. It's one of the greatest moments in Tampa sports history. And because of that, Steven Stamkos will forever be a Bolt, no matter where he plays from here on out.
And I joked with him too, man, maybe you can move into Ryan McDonough's house. He's like, yeah, maybe I'll look into it. He actually did. Him and his family didn't have to look for anywhere. He moved right into Ryan McDonough's house, right across the street from Philip Forsberg. And I still waiting on my 10% for that finder's fee, Steven Stamkos. Trev, let everybody know where they can find you. I know you're doing so many things, and including a podcast with our good friend Carmen Vitale too. That's awesome.
Sure. Yeah. Pro Football Focus, doing all of the NFL content over there. We got a grades release show we do on Monday. We do, some trenchy shows, some quarterback shows. We do a rookie show with John Ledyard, who I know a lot of your listeners know from his days with Pewter Report as well. And then, yes, Carmen Vitale and I preview every single game around the NFL on Wednesdays on the PFF YouTube channel, but that's basically where you can find everything.
You're the man. Give our love to your better half and the dog and everybody over there. Continue to make us here in the Tampa Bay area very, very proud. I appreciate your time, my brother. Have a great weekend. We'll talk to you soon.
Appreciate it, Jay. Anytime, my friend.